Greetings, YouTubers. It's your buddy Chop It On coming at you with another episode of Chop Talk brought to you by DFSArmy.com, your one-stop shop for all things DFS. Head down to the comments section, click the link, become a VIP, unleash the content, tools, and coaching that will make you a better player today. And what we're going to do is we're going to dive into the research station, possibly the domination station, and show you what we're going to do on a week like this. Personally, this is not my favorite week of NFL. And it's been a little late getting content out. I've been going back and forth over what I want to do. And honestly, it's pretty wide open. When I generally go through this box checkers type stuff that you guys notice, where we're really just looking for the best of the best plays. It's the easiest way to direct you. It's the easiest way to get you off to the right start. It's the easiest way to allow you to identify the chalk so that you can then pivot off of the chalk if you want to in those types of contests. And it works. You know, when we look at quarterbacks that are at home, that are implied to score over 24 points, that are favored, and that are possibly efficient, very efficient quarterbacks in terms of, QBR or other efficiency rating metrics, we generally land on 3, 4, 5 quarterbacks in an average week that are in good spots. From there, we need to determine which one is our favorite, which one, maybe we dig into DVP, maybe we dig into, what are his weapons like? How do we think the game's going to go? What does Vegas say? Is this, game going to be a big blowout like Minnesota has this week, or is it going to be a little bit closer like maybe Miami has this week? These types of scenarios, these are all the little tiebreakers. We start off with the indicators of home, favored, over 24, good efficient quarterback, bang, should hit value most of the time. But there are things that do come into play. Bad weather, maybe his starting receiver, falls off the bus and breaks an ankle, or all these things that do change scenarios a little bit, that we still have to look into the situation and still assess it further and say, okay, this is a grade A pick, or this is a maybe a grade C pick, or holy crap, Pat Mahomes is lighting the world on fire, throwing 10 touchdowns in his first 2 games, and he's, on the road in Pittsburgh like last week, and, Pittsburgh second, maybe he's considered, okay, you're going to tell me, oh, what about Pat Mahomes? And I'm going to say, dude, he's on the road, and he's an underdog, and you're going to say, but dude, he's Pat Mahomes. And I'm going to say, okay, but keep him to your GPPs. Well, hell, he was cash. He looks like he was cash safe last week, and maybe Pat Mahomes is going to be that kind of quarterback that is cash safe. However, he was not in a cash safe spot traditionally last week, and that's why I'm going to tell you no, pump the brakes. But if you want to go ahead and do it anyway, it's your money, it's your game, it's your hobby. I would say there's risks, so you keep it to GPPs, but you might want to run him in cash games anyway because he has such tremendous upside. That's fine. That's where we can talk in Slack as VIPs and whatnot and go back and forth. And you're just going to hear me recommend the textbook play to you. But if you can come at me with different data that says, hey, what about this? I love those discussions. That's exactly what Slack is for. You can go, and then I can say, but what about this? This is why I think he's still unsafe. And I can play devil's advocate with you and make sure you're convicted in your decision. And if you're convicted in your decision and it's logical, I'm not going to be on your butt about it. I don't care. I just am doing my due diligence by making sure that you have gone through the fundamental paces that make it a good play in your mind. That there is no right or wrong. It's NFL. It's you hear me say round bat, round ball in baseball all the time. In NFL, it's a pointed ball, dude. It bounces funny when it hits the ground. Sometimes it jumps right up into the opponent's hands. Who knows? But generally speaking, we have some parameters that we go through. Let's go through a few. When we're looking at quarterbacks, again, we're looking for home. That's the yellow teams. We're looking for favored guys. That would be spreads in the negatives in this column. So if I go number filters and go less than 0, there's my favorites, right? Now I'm looking for team totals over 24. So I would go greater than, say, 23.5, just to get the 24.0s in there. Is this now 24? Why 24? I don't know. Okay. Some of this was taken from Chris Raybon and other brighter minds than me in the industry, but it's a number that was established for a reason. I don't ask a lot of questions. I just say, okay, this guy's smart. I believe him. 23. Now, does that mean I won't take a quarterback at a 22? No. If he's good, I'm going to try. What it's trying to tell me, though, is stick with the guys 30, 29, 27. These are the guys you should be considering over, a 24 on the nose or a 24.3. Now, again, maybe this quarter, let's look. Pat Mahomes at home, favored, implied to score over 20. You cannot argue the dude's been efficient. I don't need to show you QBR numbers to show you that he's been efficient, right? So, checks all the boxes. Great play this week. 8,900 might be a little cost prohibitive though, depending on what else you want to do. Another thing that you're going to need to do, another technique, and I'm just keep driving these things home over and over and over, because it's the only way, when you have so much information to get out, the only way to get it into your heads is to just keep repeating it sometimes. You have to look at something called positional scarcity. How many positions do we have? How many players at this position do we have to legitimately pick from? Well, these three guys are pretty much out. Brady, Rodgers, Roethlisberger on the road. See ya. Outside of rare exceptions. You can't tell me that you wouldn't rather play Pat Mahomes than Tom Brady. Why? Mahomes is at home. Generally, home quarterbacks are going to outscore road quarterbacks. Not always, of course. Could Brady go light the world up for 425 yards and 4 touchdowns, and Mahomes only throw for 275 and 2 touchdowns? Yes. But in the general sense, if we took this scenario and ran it through a simulator a million times, generally the home quarterbacks are going to outperform the road quarterbacks. Generally, the higher scoring over-unders, the higher scoring implied team totals are going to outperform the lower scoring ones. Okay, so this stuff all makes perfectly logical sense. So I just throw these guys out because I'm looking to cut my list down to who's the best, not who's the 7th best, who's the best. Deshaun Watson, not efficient right now. I don't trust him yet. So I'm probably not going to consider him unless his price was like $5,000 and he was for free. Atlanta, Matt Ryan, interesting. New Orleans, shootout, high team total, high implied total on the game. $7,700 is affordable. Okay, now I've got a decision to make between $7,700 and $8,900. Which do I like better? What can I do more with my roster? Kirk Cousins, $8,600. I don't know, Mahomes or Cousins? The world is going to be on Mahomes. So I'd probably go with Mahomes myself because I've got a little bit of insulation in my cash games. That doesn't mean that Cousins isn't going to outperform him. That makes Cousins more of a GPP pivot because the ownership's going to be on Mahomes. So the lower ownership play that is in a similar spot at a similar price point and won't be, that you could maybe get leverage. If Mahomes has a bad day and Cousins has a good day, then you leapfrog a ton of people on the leaderboards and you gain all that leverage. That's why you would do something like that. In cash games, I mean, they're probably both in play. They're home, they're favored, they're implied to score a bunch of points, right? Except Kirk Cousins is so heavily favored, everybody seems to think that that means they're going to run the ball late, traditionally, and lean on Dalvin Cook or Latavius Murray or somebody like that. And they'd be right. So maybe that takes him out of play. That is not a box that we typically check for quarterbacks, but it is something that we look at and go, oh, maybe they won't need him as much. Maybe he won't throw as much. Instead of throwing 40 passes a week, maybe he'll only throw 30. That cuts his volume, cuts his ceiling down a little bit, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. These are just the things you have to do when you walk through the slate. Carson Wentz, you cannot argue the spot he's in. 7,400 is cheap for Carson Wentz too. Home, good matchup against a poor secondary. Favored in a decent implied team total. Implied team total. What is his implied total? 27.5? 27? Okay. 7,400. But now you've got to go back to, okay, there's no box to check for coming off torn ACL, but we all know that that's a little bit risky. He's not maybe going to be able to run around as well. They say he can, but will they use him that way? Will they use him on bootlegs? Will they give him his full arsenal of plays to pick from? Or will they try to kind of keep him under wraps a little bit, like Aaron Rodgers last week, with his knee, and kind of just focus on a lot of quick short passes, get the ball out, get the ball out. Don't run much. Don't let the rush get to you so big fat men can fall on you. Whatever. That is where you're going with that one. So that's going to put doubt in your mind or risk into the play. Doesn't mean he's not a great GPP play. It means even though he's in a cash safe situation, he's in a box checking situation, he might not be the best play. In your mind, he might be. You can look at home favored, big total, efficient quarterback, etc., and say if he comes back and he is what he is, then he's a great play. And you're right. But compared to what else we're looking at, he's probably a little bit risky. Jared Goff is a great play this week. Home, favored, whatever. I mean, everyone looks at LA Chargers. Did you realize their DVOA isn't that good against the pass? Goff might be throwing them. Yes, he's going to run it with Gurley, but he's maybe going to have to balance it out and do some throwing too. Goff is the third most efficient quarterback right now in terms of whichever one it was. I think it was total QBR, and I think he's seventh in yards per pass attempt. So those are good efficiency numbers, or yards per completion, or whatever the hell the number was that I was looking at. I didn't write it down. I don't have my notebook with me right now. But the idea is he's home, he's favored, high total, and he's efficient. So just like Cousins, maybe you're going to say, well, they're going to lean on Gurley more. That's fine. That's up to you to determine. I'm just pointing out the spot they're in. If I look at Flacco, home, favored, what's his team total? Is it up there? 24.8. Technically, it checks the box. Not as strongly as these others, but technically it checks the box. So you want to run Flacco? Don't laugh. He's in play. Is he the best play of this grouping? Probably not. But he's in play. So if somebody came at me with a bunch of different numbers and said, the last 3 times he played Denver, it was this, or Denver's coming out of the mountains, and okay. I'm going to tell you he might be more of a GPP type of play because his ceiling isn't traditionally that high. Anyway, his floor might be great, but he is dirt cheap. There's a lot of reasons to like the guy. Maybe you like him. These are the guys that are typically going to be in cash. Now, again, that doesn't mean there aren't some road quarterbacks that aren't great, or even some road dogs, but we don't count on garbage time as much in the quarterback position as we do the wide receiver position. Why? Because quarterbacks don't get a point per completion, and they only get 1 point per 25 yards. It takes them a lot more garbage time yardage to make a headway on a leaderboard. Whereas their wide receiver that they're using is the one that's going to get all of the garbage time points. He gets either a half a point or a full point per reception just for catching the ball, and he gets 1 point for every 10 yards, and he gets 6 points for a touchdown when the quarterback only gets 4. So I made an example in Slack the other day that if a quarterback marches down the field 75 yards and throws a score, he gets 3 for the 75 yards, and he gets 4 for the touchdown, 7 points. Good for him. If he used the same receiver for all of that, the same receiver got probably 4 receptions, 5 receptions, so call that 2.5 points, plus the 75 yards is another 7.5 or 8, so call that 10 points, plus 6 for the touchdown, 16. So whereas the quarterback got 7, the wide receiver got 16 points. See the difference? You're going to make a lot more headway in garbage time with the wide receiver than you are the quarterback. But everybody used to think, oh, play the quarterback in garbage time, garbage time. Blake Bortles is the garbage time god, blah, 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 blah. No, it was a little bit flawed. Not entirely inaccurate, but a little bit flawed. So that's another reason we typically don't think about garbage time or want to run those guys in cash scenarios and bank on garbage time. Garbage time might not happen. We're wanting to find shootouts, passing situation shootouts, high implied totals with home teams, big. You might consider Garoppolo, but I wouldn't consider him in cash because he's on the road. And Arrowhead is a very difficult place to play. Loud, can't get the signals in correctly, lots of mistakes, false starts, moving backwards, with the penalties and whatever else type of situation. That's what Arrowhead in Kansas City does to visiting teams. Garoppolo's not cash safe this week. Great GPP play, perhaps. This thing gets into a shootout and goes crazy, or worst case scenario, Kansas City can't score a damn thing and San Francisco just runs away with it. I mean, yeah, those are GPP winning moves, but it's not safe enough to be used in cash games when you don't need to take a ton of risk. Okay? If we look at the running backs, we would go through the exact same thing, but I'm going to get to the domination station here pretty quick. And we would go through and look for who's home, who's favored, who's in the big scoring spots, who's scheduled to score over, however many points. I guess we don't use that for box checkers in running backs, but we do look for favored. We look for heavy favorites. Why heavy favorites? Because we want to see who's likely to be running the clock out late. And I should have been less than 0. And I'll probably have to go take everybody away. And I'll probably, oh, there we go. There's my less than zeros. Okay, so let's sort by descending and bring the big favorites to the top. I guess I got to go ascending and bring the big favorites to the top, the heavy favorites. It's going to be Minnesota up top, obviously. Okay, now that we've got some, decent team totals, which they matter, but we're going to look for some of those teams. I don't know what the 3.3 stuff is, but the 16.5, the 7, the 6.5s, the 5.5s, whatever. These are the types of game flows that are going to be suggesting that the team should be in control late and be leaning on the running back. Obviously not the Chris Thompson pass-catching running back, more like the Dalvin Cook, the Leonard Fournette, the Todd Gurley type. Gurley, great spot. Again, what do you get out of the being cost prohibitive at 9,300? Can you recover that in your share? The other thing I didn't mention about the positional scarcity was when there are very, very few options to take advantage of, you kind of have to pay for what Slate offers to take the best situation possible. However, when it's very, very deep and you've got a lot of options, then you might look to pay down. Now, I look to pay up at running back because obviously running backs are a little bit more secure in their workload. They're a little bit higher floor, and these for cash games and even tournament lineups are good anchors for your lineup. You may take one good one in a great scenario situation, and then you might take a contrarian one also in a great situation. Names like Jordan Howard, pop to mind. My favorite GPP play I shared in Slack yesterday is Kareem Hunt, because I can see a scenario where Kansas City hasn't used him yet this week or this year. Andy Reid tends to forget his Jamal Charles type players. He forgot Travis Kelce in week 1, went to him in week 2, even though DVOA against the tight end was good with Pittsburgh and it was supposedly a tougher matchup. Well, they took away Tyreek Hill and went to Travis Kelce. That's a lot to cover when you're thinking about Kansas City, but there are scenarios where Kansas City gets a lead because San Francisco doesn't have the weapons to keep up and they can't hear themselves think inside that stadium anyway. Then they're scrambled and they're having a hard time with getting plays in and all the confusion with a young quarterback and everything else. And then from there, Kansas City gets out to a couple of quick strikes with either punt return with Tyreek like they did, or long pass plays to Kelce or Tyreek or whatever, or even Kareem Hunt breaks one on his own. And then they lean on him late as the kind of the early down back situation where they've got a 6 to 10 point lead in the third or fourth quarter, and then they start just handing the ball to Kareem, hand the ball to Kareem, hand the ball to Kareem, and he starts getting kind of reverse garbage time type yard. That's a great scenario, and punches 1 or 2 in. That's a great scenario. Plus, he has the talent to do an Alvin Kamara and just break one at any given time, a Saquon Barkley, whatever, and just break one. Todd Gurley. He's that kind of a back. So he could be a GPP winner, and nobody will be on him. Why? Because first of all, nobody listens to this YouTube podcast. Second of all, because they're all on Fournette, or not Fournette, but Gurley and Corey Clement and Giovanni Bernard and the other popular names that you're hearing this week, Dalvin Cook, guys that are in better scenarios than Kareem Hunt. And so the ownership on Kareem will be low, and he could absolutely win you a GPP. He's my favorite GPP play this week. Do I think he's going to do it? No. But I can see logical scenarios where he very easily could. If you took the situation in just pure terms of black and white and say he had like a 5% chance to have a great game like that, this particular scenario with the Vegas support, with the crowd noise, with the San Francisco, having trouble keeping up with them, with the fact they can get out, Kansas City can get out to early leads and lean on the clock, with the fact that Andy Reid hasn't used Kareem Hunt yet and might be wanting to feed one of his studs a little bit more this week, whatever. With all of those things played in the situation, then instead of a black and white situation of 5%, maybe this goes up to 7%, 10%, 12%. I don't know. It's not an 80% chance he's going to have a great game, but it is an increased chance he's going to have a great game. Therefore, it may be worth the gamble. Does that make sense? This is just another way that we think inside this industry. But your obvious situations are Dalvin Cook if he's not injured. If injured, okay, because Jay Ajayi is out, Darren Sproles is probably out. You're looking at Corey Clement, and why Clement? He's home, he's favored, he's got his spread in his favor, whatever. Get it? He's going to get 18 touches. He wouldn't usually, but he will this week. Why? Because he's got no competition. There's nobody on the depth chart. That's why you lock him in, and he's dirt ass cheap and allows you to buy up studs elsewhere because he's a talented running back, and he's in a spot where he might be getting stud usage, stud workload. He's not in a committee this week. So he's just your cash lock. He's your week 1 James Conner. Will it pan out? I don't know. Conner did, but Clement might only get you 6 points. I don't know. What I know is that the scenario is very, very bright for him today. Giovanni Bernard, similar situation. Dalvin Cook should be the smash spot at 6,500, but people are questioning what exactly is he going to get in workload, and is this game going to get so out of hand so quickly that they just put him on the shelf with this little bit of a hamstring issue or whatever and bring Latavius Murray in? Now, does that mean Latavius Murray is a cash safe bet? No, he's not scheduled to start the game. But like a Baker Mayfield last night, if you predicted that, good on you. But in a Latavius Murray situation, he could come in and get all of the run in the second half because they just yank Cook and say, rest your hammy. And that is a great GPP type move because not a lot of people are going to take that kind of a risk. People might not even see it coming, but it's a great possibility. Again, you want to be all alone, run Latavius Murray and Kareem Hunt. Believe me, you'll have the world to yourself, and you've got 2 running backs very, very capable. And you faded the Corey Clement chalk, which will double down on the leverage because Clement, if he has a bad game, you gain all that leverage on the field. All your play has to do is go off, and if your play goes off, you climb the leaderboard. See, if Corey Clement goes off and you use Latavius Murray instead, then you're both still kind of neck and neck. You had the ownership if Corey Clement had a bad game, but you're still kind of neck and neck if they both score 23 points. It didn't really gain you much. But if Clement has a bad day and Latavius Murray has a good day, that's how you win GPPs. Kareem Hunt would be the same as a Todd Gurley. If Todd Gurley has a bad day and Kareem Hunt, although the price isn't the same, but you get where I'm going with this, okay? So, but we don't have a ton of spot. Running back seems pretty good. We've got a few choices at quarterback. Wide receivers where the challenge is this week. Wide receivers, we look for road underdogs. Why? Garbage time. We look for under 18 implied points. Why? Garbage time. We look for over 27 points. Why? High scoring game, possibly using the receivers. We look for a few of those scenarios, and the way you do that, you got to do this twice. You got to first go under 18 with the less than, and then you got to come back and clear that filter and then change it to greater than 27 and do it again to get both sides, both bookends of that filter when you're looking for guys. And but you need guys that are getting 8+ targets, that are getting red zone work, that are getting, those types of scenarios, because that's what's going to really, and what you're going to find is the pickings are pretty slim this week. And when they're slim, that doesn't mean it's a bad week for cash. It means it's not a great week for cash. It means there's a lot more wide open. You've got a lot of scenarios that are maybe not exactly right. You can't afford Julio and Antonio and Michael Thomas and DeAndre Hopkins and whatever else. You can't afford all of them tonight. You're going to have to go down to the value. And there is no Quincy Enunwa down there at 5,000 this week. There are some cheaper plays that our VIPs know about, but you're not going to see a lot of the sub, say, 6,500 type guys on Fanduel. And DraftKings is only going to be tougher, but you're not going to find those guys running rampant to allow you to pay way up for your Alvin Kamara's, way up for your Todd Gurley's. And so therefore, those are really going to hamper you tonight or this week. If you try to use those big running backs, you're going to have to come dig down here in the punt situations where you don't really have it. So, you don't have the options. So what you might need to consider instead is paying down at running back where it makes sense. Clement, Gio, Dalvin Cook, whatever. And then pay up instead at the wide receiver spot when you've freed up some money to go get these guys. Okay? So every slate is different, every week is different, but you've got to be assessing the situation in your head as you walk through. How are the prices looking? Where might I need to pay? I really want Alvin Kamara, but damn, I can't run him with Todd Gurley this week because I don't have three viable receivers that are cheap to be able to allow me to do it. I don't have a super cheap defense that's obvious. I don't have a super cheap tight end maybe that's obvious. And I'll show you tight end here. I'm just telling you with the wide receivers, it's a hard one to do. And do you loosen your parameters and go down to 6 targets? Well, maybe. Maybe that's one way to do it. Look for guys that are maybe not necessarily under 18 or under 20, over 27. Sure. Those are ways to do it too. You can loosen the parameters a little bit in your searching, that you also have to be able to walk through these scenarios and understand who's in good spots. I mean, these guys are all set to dominate the slate at any given day. AJ Green, not bad. Odell Beckham, nice GPP pivot. Keenan Allen. You want to keep coming down here to some of the cheaper guys. Golden Tate gets targets. Facing New England, but he gets targets. Marvin Jones, maybe not. Nelson Aguilar. I don't know how he's going to be effective with Carson Wentz and with Jordan Matthews returning. Jarvis Landry played last night. Amari Cooper, Emmanuel Sanders goes faces Baltimore, the number one defense against the pass right now. Although they got torched by Tyler Boyd on the last week's slate from the slot. Which, by the way, Tyler Boyd is another one. He's your value wide receiver this week. He's in a good spot to demolish again. He's getting a lot of run, getting a lot of work. Devin Funchess. I mean, these are guys you may have to use, but you're still not really under 6,000 yet. You got to get down into here. Do you trust Paul Richardson? No. John Brown, probably not, and he's in the low sixes anyway. Jamison Crowder hasn't done anything lately. Alan Hearns, no. Tyrell Williams, no. You keep coming down here. You're looking hopefully for somebody down. Cole Beasley, probably not. Danny Amendola, maybe, probably not though. Not for cash games. You're looking for these guys to hopefully get you something. And they're not yet. So there's no confidence in them. There's no safety with some of these picks. So you're in a tough spot this week. When we look at tight ends, defenses is Minnesota, maybe Jacksonville, Baltimore, Chicago, stuff like that. We don't need to go into those. I don't know down in here who I'm really looking for because, again, I want a lot of targets. I want them home. I want them favored again. The reason why is that's typically when tight ends get used. You get all the way down inside the 5, you flip 2-yard pass to the tight end, etc. I like Zach Ertz the most. I don't know that Travis Kelce's going to be used like he was last week. I think a lot of people are going to chase those points. Gronk's always Gronk. But up here in this upper echelon, I do like Zach Ertz for safety. I think that he's Wentz's favorite target. I think he's going to get the targets he's already been getting anyway. Red zone usage, he definitely gets that. And he's in a decent matchup with a team that struggles to guard the tight end in Indianapolis. So he's in about as good a situation as you can be in, right? Cash safe. Expensive as hell. So the spot where we normally pay down, I might pay up in cash if I can make it fit with cheaper running backs or something. Okay, but positional scarcity tells me that there are not a lot of tight ends this week to really pick from that I saw at first glance. I'd have to go back through it again, and we're running short on time. So forgive me if I'm wrong, and there's 6 tight ends to choose from that are getting a lot of targets and a lot of red zone work and a lot of whatever, like your Kyle Rudolphs and whatever else, George Kittle. So there's 2, 3. I don't trust Jack Doyle or Ebron. I think they're in a committee. I think committees suck. Trey Burton in Chicago hasn't been used quite right yet. I mean, Will Dissly, great pick if you're on the main slate. So there are options. You can pay down if you want, and that may be what it does. I like Ertz the most, but I may not be able to use him. I may have to go down to a Dissly or down to somebody cheaper just to be able to fit in a high floor running back or a second one or a second high floor receiver or something like that I want. I'm probably going to have to pay down at quarterback. Why? Because I've got options in Jared Goff and whatever down there. Am I happy about it? Not entirely. It's not what I'd ideally like to do, but it's what I may have to do to be able to balance my roster and get as much floor across the roster from top to bottom. Now, again, how do I use Domination Station? Let's use this slate here as an example of Thursday through Monday since it's already played. The first thing I would do is uncheck that Cleveland box because of the Thursday game fade. What is the Thursday game fade? When the game looks kind of crappy, lower scoring, couple of bad teams on a short week, etc., you can fade that off. A lot of people are going to get in those games on Wednesday and Thursday looking to start their week of football. They've been waiting for 3 or 4 days, reading information for 3 or 4 days, or chomping at the bit to get in there. Ownership goes higher than it should be. Jarvis Landry, Quincy Enunwa, the quarterbacks, the running backs, whatever, are all higher owned than they should be. Therefore, you can gain some leverage even in cash games by fading that game off and just picking from the rest. Now, why that doesn't burn you as off, or I mean, it could burn you when a Carlos Hyde goes for 2 touchdowns or a Isaiah Crowell goes for 2 touchdowns, and people were picking them because their ownership was too high, and they're using them against you. However, it doesn't always work against you because I've still got 15 other games to make up. I've got a 55-point total here, 53 here, 53 here, 53 here, 48 here. I've got big total games and big offenses that I can still go to and make up those points perhaps. And at the very least in cash games, you can still cross the 50-50 line. But a lot of times this game will end up dudding out. And when this game duds out, then you gain leverage on all of those people that were a little overly excited last night to roster these players. They'll roster 2 or 3 of them sometimes, etc. And not often does the game go to the point where on a 16-game slate, you had to have one of those players in order to cash. That doesn't happen very often. So the advantage is in fading it. We all know that by now, I think. At least the DFS industry knows that. What do I do when I'm going down through the Domination Station? I'll set my unique players at a couple of them, 2, maybe 3. I'll build, say, 10, 12, 15 lineups, something like that. And I don't touch much else. I'll go to the QB and I will uncheck their boxes. And then what I will do is I will go back through here and I will click, guys that I'm considering on my rosters. If it was cash, these would be the guys that I'd be looking for. Drew Brees not at home, but I mean, Drew Brees has good access to Kamara, who should have a good game, and Mike Thomas. So I could say he's cash viable. Will I use him if he pops into my lineups? No, so I might as well uncheck him. But if you wanted to use him, I'm not going to fault you for it. Matt Ryan at home, Jared Goff, Fitzpatrick, Garoppolo, Stafford, Wentz. I mean, I'm not saying he's cash safe. You know what I mean? But he's viable for sure. Alex Smith, Derek Carr, Case Keenum, Blake Bortles, Joe Flacco, right? We said Flacco was. It'll probably favor him. I don't really, Tannehill, whatever. So what am I using? 4 of them. And I've got my running backs, my wide receivers, and everybody else checked that way too. I click Optimize. I scroll down. I watch it start putting these lineups out and whatnot. And it's going to include a bunch of these guys. It's a Sunday slate that's going to be working on these others. So I'll go pick them through those 10, 12 lineups. Who do I like the best? How many times did it use, Will Disley or Gronk? Or how many times did it use Zach Ertz or Mike Thomas? Or did it stack Drew Brees with Mike Thomas or Jared Goff with Todd Gurley or whatever? And how do I feel about that lineup as far as the overall floor of that lineup? I'm not looking at the overall projections. I'm not thinking about multipliers, 3x, 4x, anything like that. I'm thinking about how strong is this lineup from top to bottom? How likely is this lineup to capture all of the points that these guys are in position to receive? And how safe, how high is my floor? And that goes into cash games. Yet I want ceiling with it too, because if it explodes, I want it to get into the top 10 of 100 people in my 50-50s, because I also put my stuff in triple ups and in quintuple ups and whatever else, because when these lineups really come together and work really well, they demolish cash games. And I don't want to only make $2 for every dollar on a lineup that was in the top 10 of 100 people. That lineup should have been in triple ups and quintuple ups where it would make even more money. That's how you recover losses from, bad selection earlier in the week or a bad lineup that went wrong last week. And that's essentially the ladder system. I encourage you to go look, DFS Army ladder system, whatever. There's a video, there's an article out there that I compiled a couple of years ago that shows you how to build those structures. Those I may even throw a link in here in the comments section. But my point is, that's how I use the Domination Station. If I put up any rules, I'm not going to use team stacking so much as I use position stacking. And I'm going to say, let's take the quarterback, and let's say I won't even pick the players, but no less than, how about exactly one player, running back, wide receiver, tight end, from the same team, add rule. When it adds that rule, now maybe I'll go in and add another rule, right? I'll say no more than 2 players from this grouping, right? So it's going to have exactly one of these, no more than 2. And I may even say, from add another rule for the opposite team, whatever. Play with these rules a little bit, set them up. You can make as many rules as you want. And then, boom, you click Optimize again. And now it's going to go back through and it's going to start stacking. Matt Ryan with Tevin Coleman. Matt Ryan, Julio Jones. See how it's got no more than 2, but it's got 1 in there. So that's the idea, what we're trying to accomplish. We're getting on 35 minutes, guys. I cut it off at the end a little bit because I just don't want to take too terribly much of your time. I'm going to throw this in Wishbone. You've got a link to comment to all of the content DFS Army puts out every week. You know we do the coaching. You know that we talk deep about the sports. You know that we are trying to make you better players. I encourage you to come check us out. Become a VIP. Get in now while the getting's still good. Use coupon code CHOP, C-H-O-P, to trigger that 10% discount. And come introduce yourself to all of the coaches. That's what we're here for. We talk this all day long. We talk DFS all day long. And if I'm not around, somebody else will be. We can all help you. That's what we're trying to do. Come dive a little bit deeper with us and make yourself a better player. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button down there. Thanks for watching the video. Thanks for commenting, everything that you guys do. I really appreciate it. And don't forget to follow the link, dfsarmy.com. Hopefully I see you inside Slack here, I don't know, in the next couple of hours maybe. Take care, guys. We'll see you soon.